secrets and bodies, and it was deeply, deeply fascinating. And I would give it a 15 out of 10 for fascination. So yeah, 5 stars, no questions.
The childhood, and it kind of really depicts how weird childhood is and can be. And I love getting inside minds, references or themes in relation to sort of separation.
And to have such an eerie reverberation.
Hello, I'm Sharon and this is Hooked on Books, and today I'm going to be talking about a buddy read that I did with someone who needs no introduction. That is Shawn at shawnthebookmaniac, and we both read Such Small Hands by Barba, which is translated from the Spanish by Dillman. And it's a tiny little book and it's split into 3 parts, so Shawn came up with the idea that we could read a part each day, so we read this over the course of 3 days. And I think it really added to my experience to do that, because it's the kind of book that I would normally sit and read in one sitting, but I found that it's the kind of book that warrants for a lot of thinking and analysis. And I found that reading one part and then allowing myself to just think about it throughout the day before I would read the second part the next day, it was so much more enjoyable. And then to be able to talk to someone about it, I think it's the perfect book for a buddy read, because it allowed me to kind of voice any sort of thoughts or analysis I might have had, and to kind of it allowed me to think about it so much more. So I really, really enjoyed buddy reading this, and especially with Shawn, because I don't know, he's a great person to buddy read with. We both really, really enjoyed this, and he has stated that he gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I was kind of in between 4 and 5, but I ended up giving it 5, having allowed myself to think about it even more. It's definitely a 5 for me as well. It's not a perfect book by any means, but I just found it a really fascinating and a really intriguing little book. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. I'm not going to go too much into the plot because I don't want to give too many spoilers or anything, but just want to give you an idea of what this book is like. So I went in believing this to be a sort of literary horror, I guess. I expected it to be quite creepy. You know, the cover itself is quite creepy with a little doll, and you know, on the front and the back, you know, it's got a ton of quotes that talk about it being chilling and sinister and all the rest of it. I was kind of fearful that it was going to end up being a sort of cheap horror rehash of like an evil doll or something, and thankfully it ended up being so much more than all of that. So it kind of looks at the psychological inner workings of children, and in particular a child who's been through a traumatic event, so it's quite disturbing in a psychological sense. So it opens up with this character Marina, whose parents have just died in a car crash. As she says, her father died instantly and her mother died in the hospital, and that leaves her to go to an orphanage, and she goes to this orphanage with this doll that a psychologist has given her, and then we meet what is kind of like this collective we. So you get the parts of Marina, and then you get the we of the girls that are at this orphanage, so there's no sort of individual characters at this orphanage, it's just a selection of girls and it's written as we. In the first part I noticed a lot of sort of separation, a lot of themes about separation, and then Shawn pointed out in the second part there was a lot of sort of themes of identity and differentiation, and then there was further themes of desire and obsession, and I loved all these themes and I loved kind of exploring them all in this strange little story. And I enjoyed sort of thinking about why these girls ended up so obsessed with Marina, because she's quite a quiet character really. They know that she's been through this difficult event and they have this great love for her, a really great sort of obsessional love for her, but she doesn't talk about her experiences, and when she does it's in a very sort of emotionless way, and I think that might be part of where the obsession comes from. They're trying to understand her, but this is kind of this real love and real hate, and Marina's got this huge influence over the girls, and in the third part she creates this game. I'm not going to go into the details of what the game is, but it's the perfect kind of thing that a child would make up, but there's something really quite sinister about it, yet it's so delicate and so intimate and so innocent. So I really loved that, and I just thought it was a really perfect game for the writer to come up with in this book, and I thought the writer was an absolute genius in some parts of this book. And what I loved about it is that it was so subtly done, and I kind of live in fear of books like this because I feel like it can be really subtle to begin with and then it ends up being really heavy-handed, but this book worked with the subject matter really well from start to finish, and it's a strange book that allows you to kind of come to your own conclusions, allows you to kind of read between the lines, it allows you to apply your own meanings in order to try to understand what's even happening. And I love books that aren't sort of tying everything up with a little bow and feeding everything to you and treating you like you're an idiot, and this book doesn't do any of that. There was this sort of back and forth between Marina's meeting with a psychologist and this story about a caterpillar, and I kept going back and forth and it was brilliant. So if you read it, look out for that part because it was fantastic. And then there were some parts that had this real sort of disorientating feel, and I love all that stuff, so it was fantastic. And there's so much to think about in here. Even though it's this tiny little book, it definitely packs a punch. So I do really recommend this if it's the kind of thing that you're interested in. Both Shawn and I thought it was fantastic, and I really love buddy reading it as well. So if you have the opportunity to buddy read this with anyone, I do highly recommend it. But I'm going to read a couple of passages here just to give you an idea of what the writing style is like. Watching the words as if they were an aeroplane, flying from one end of the hospital room to the other. She was staring after the white contrail the words left in their wake. We ambled awkwardly alongside Marina's memory, always parallel, always tired, always hungry, but the urgency of our desire wasn't enough to bring it to life, and then we tired of trying, and desire turned to rage against that girl who seemed too old. As we undressed her, the chosen girl would become smaller and more compact. She'd lose her smell. That precious, fragile thing, her smell, yes, even that would disappear. So for me, the writing was really sort of intricate, had this sort of intricate detail that really added to the eerie kind of sinister feel of the story. And I really loved the writing style in this. And Shawn and I were actually talking about potentially he looked up and found that there were some other books that this author has written that have been translated into English. So we'll definitely be doing another buddy read of one of his books in the future. So I'm looking forward to that. So yes, that's Such Small Hands. If you've read it, if you're interested, if you're not interested, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you again in another video very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.